With all the success you've had, do you still face, are you currently facing any fears, or are there fears about the horizon?
Man, I have to give you amazing props. You're such a curious person about the people that you talk to. I love it. I love it, man.
Thank you.
The answer is, thank you. Are you kidding me? I've been on a ton of podcasts and people just same questions.
Welcome to the Idea Climbing Radio Show. Today we're here with Kyle McDowell. Thank you for making the time to be here, Kyle.
Mark, it is my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And I'm wondering, you have such an awesome journey from corporate America to entrepreneurship and speaking and thought leadership. What are you rather than a typical bio, what are you the most proud of with your career? What would you say comes to the top of mind when you think of something like that?
Well, without question, that answer is easy for me. It's the impact on people. It's connecting with those that I either worked shoulder to shoulder with, those that reported to me, those that I would call a leader or a mentor in my own view. It's the impact. If you were to ask me, name the top 3 business accomplishments that you're most proud of, it might take me an hour to come up with 3. If you ask me to name the top 3 people I'm most proud of the impact that I may have had the smallest part in playing in their journey, take me about 3 seconds. So without question, it's the connections I've made throughout my career.
That is awesome. We're going to get into creating a culture of we, even if you're a solopreneur or maybe co-founder or something like that. But before we get into some of the strategies and the different we's, what's your story? How did you discover those 10 we's?
Yeah, I was very similar to probably many of your audience in several ways, but at least in one way I think is probably most identifiable in that, throughout my career, and I think this is true whether you're an entrepreneur or someone that spent your entire career in big corporate America, which is the path I took, we do start to lose our energy, our enthusiasm, our optimism and excitement for the thing that we do every single day, work. And for me, it was palpable. So I spent nearly 30 years in big corporate America. I led tens of thousands of employees at really marquee names that I'm sure are front of mind for many of your audience because they're big names, and the ironic thing is, as I managed to kind of ascend the corporate rankings, I managed to check a lot of boxes, things that I'd identified as success criteria for myself, the fancy titles, the big compensation, the fancy corner offices, all these things. I wanted to lead big teams. But the ironic part was that the more my scope grew and the more, I guess, important, for lack of a better word, I was made to feel, the greater my sense of apathy for the work I was doing. So while I was able to deliver tremendous results in the first 20-ish years of my career, I didn't ask the right questions. I was asking what was next. How do I take on more? How do I get more? How do I become more important? And the question I should have been asking was, am I having the impact that I can look back at one day and be proud of? So I made this pivot, man. It was probably year 22, maybe 23 of my career. I was really fed up with the big corporate machine. And I said, I needed a way out. I had to get out. So I sat on the sidelines, and in a real be careful what you wish for moment, I was given an opportunity to lead a $7 billion program with 15,000 employees. And I was warned that there was a bit of cultural deficiency. There was some dysfunction going on, and it was ripe for transformation. And I knew, for whatever reason, man, it was a real inflection point on my career. I knew if I wanted the same results, I should just do the same thing. If I wanted to have great business results, but yet be unfulfilled and not really connecting with those that I led and those that were around me, I knew that recipe. But I also knew if I wanted to find greater fulfillment and reconnect with the passion and purpose that I think all of us enter the workforce, regardless of our path, I needed to do something different. So the night before I was going to meet with the top 40 or 50 leaders of that organization that I was lucky enough to land the role to lead, I just said I need to do something different. And my laptop was open, and I had a presentation to give the next morning to these leaders. And about 2 hours later, I was left with nothing but 10 sentences. I didn't have a whole lot to go on, but each of those sentences all began with the word "we." And they were kind of my rules, essentially. Here's how I wanted others to view us. Here's how I wanted us to view each other. And these were, as I introduced to the team the next morning, these were the the rules that would kind of govern how we treat one another, because I didn't care about our clients yet. I wanted to make sure we were high functioning and taking care of each other behind the curtains, and that would lead to success externally. And I rolled that dice, and that was about 7 years ago, Mark. And since then, I've been able to put those principles into a book that's becoming a Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestseller. And I travel the country now evangelizing the value of a we orientation and a we paradigm, using the 10 we's as my foundational principles.
How would you define the culture of we, just to get the ball rolling before we get into the weeds with the strategies? How do you define a culture of we?
Yeah, actually, I call it a culture of excellence, and
Okay.
that's what I aspire to lead, and with my clients today, and in my own businesses, is create a culture of excellence, not perfection, but a culture of excellence. My definition, this is Kyle's definition, is all players involved. So bosses, leaders, the entry-level intern, we all operate on a level playing field, and we are aligned in our personal, our professional, and our corporate goals. In other words, everyone on the team is really, to the degree everyone's okay sharing. Let me just give that caveat. But everyone on the team is well aware of each other's personal goals, our ambitions to do, whether it's inside of this team, inside of this company, whether it's to go start our own side hustle, create our own business, our own opportunities. We're aware of that, because when we're aware of each other's personal goals, we can help them, and we're wired to do so. So I think that's probably the differentiating factor in my description of a culture, is including those personal kind of aspirations of those involved. And then the corporate and professional goals, I think those are table stakes. We should always be aligned around those.
Can you speak a little bit more to that? That's such a big topic, aligning personal and professional goals, especially in a business environment when personal can get chucked out the window in lieu of those, in lieu of the professional ones. How do you align personal and professional goals?
Well, you got to have a connection, right? You've got to be on an open, authentic. You've got to be able to ask tough questions and actually listen to the answers. And throughout my experiences inside of leading lots of teams, and also obviously being led, I found that there was this gap in authentic connections. And the gap was usually, we didn't talk much about things that happened outside of work. You got a sick kid, maybe I'd hear about it. But there were, everyone is so programmed to speak business speak. We have two vocabularies, actually. We speak very differently at home and with our friends and family than we do in the workplace, which I think is a crime. But for me, I wanted folks to understand from where I was coming, and I needed them to understand I was going to hold our teams accountable to these principles, and vice versa. So and being open about that, and not putting on this facade of perfection like most leaders do, and act as if they don't need help. They don't, they have all the answers. I'll tell you a quick story. So many years ago, I led a team of about 5,000 employees, and I had a guy on the team who reported directly to me. He came in one morning and said, "Kyle, I've got an opportunity at another company. It's a bigger job, pays a heck of a lot more. And I'm aware of our financial situation. I know you can't match this offer. So I just wanted to be upfront and let you know this was happening. And, you might want to start planning some succession." So I said, "Okay, tell me more about the role." He proceeded to give me all the ins and outs of the role. "Tell me about the company. Tell me about what it is that you feel is the one hurdle or objection they may have to hiring you." I said, "Give me your resume. I want to make sure your resume is as tight as it can be." And then we did mock interviews prior to his final round of interviews. And man, he was so ready for this role. Well, he didn't get the job. He came back the following Monday to say he had the interview over the weekend. It didn't go well. And they had decided to move in a different direction. But Mark, from that moment forward, how committed do you think this fellow was to me and to our collective mission while he was still on the team? Because he saw me as someone that was investing in his personal growth, not just what I could get out of him for our team, but what I could do for him personally on his own growth path. Parenthetically, I love to share that that fella and I worked together at 4 more companies over the course of the next 14 years.
Wow.
So I think that's when you invest time and energy and care into someone's personal aspirations, their goals outside of the workplace, there's a connection that is hard to refute, that helps us get through tough work times. It helps us be better connected when adversity hits. And then, of course, when things go well, we just celebrate so much more. And we're grateful for the role each other played in that success.
So where does a culture of excellence, I mean, where does it even begin if something's, even if it's just borderline dysfunctional, it's not great, but it seems like that could be a Herculean task. How does a culture of excellence begin in the first place?
It is Herculean. And I'd never want to come across naive on a platform such as yours, because I am aware there are organizations where the toxicity and the dysfunction just runs too deep. And if you're in that environment, you need to make a decision. Am I comfortable running uphill with a parachute on, trying to drive change, or is there an environment that will more embrace my enthusiasm and my innovation and my will to have a lasting impact? So I'm not, that caveat is always out there for me. I'm not naive to that. Now, there are scenarios where if the big engine, if we're working inside of a big company, is largely dysfunctional, that does not mean either if I'm an individual contributor or if I have a very small team, that doesn't mean I don't have a loud voice in the environment in which we operate or I operate. Similarly, if I've become kind of disenfranchised or feel as if I'm not making a difference in my entrepreneurship journey, or I'm leading a team of maybe just myself, or perhaps maybe a team of one. One of my principles is we lead by example, and it's obviously hard to refute. It's not new. It's not confrontational. No one's going to disagree with that. The question is not, should I lead by example? The question is, am I leading by an example that I would like to see replicated? If we're blast all over the internet or social media, is this something I would be proud of? And that's the first filter to say, I'm behaving in a way that's beginning to create this culture of excellence. It's when my words and my actions aren't aligned. Those around me sense the inauthenticity, and any hope of a relationship or a high functioning connection between those around me and myself it's probably not going to happen. So I do believe that transparency is critical as well.
We touched on this in one of our previous conversations, and you just did a little bit there. As far as entrepreneurs go, maybe they're solopreneurs or they have a small team. Could you explain why a culture of excellence is important for them? Because I think so many people think a culture of excellence is for the Fortune 500, the Fortune 100, the 50-person team. But it's just as important, I think, for those smaller teams and the people on that entrepreneurship journey. Could you unpack that a little bit? What does that look like? How do you develop a culture of excellence if you're not you're not a cog in a big wheel of machinery?
Yeah, well, I can speak from experience on this, because I mentioned, leading tens of thousands in big companies. When I left corporate America in 2019 to write my book and then launch my own company, the transition was not an easy one. And, when you've got a really big business card with a fancy title on it, it's a lot easier to get help. People want to have FaceTime with you. Your jokes are always a lot funnier. But when I made the transition to a team of one, there was no time that I felt a need or that I ever feel that my principles, the 10 W's, were of any less importance. Because these are standards that I hold myself accountable to inside the workplace, outside the workplace, and most importantly, inside the workplace, that is, rarely is a solopreneur doing it all themselves. There are suppliers, there are vendors. Maybe you have a subcontractor that works for you. Even if it's someone that washes your car on a weekly basis, you have an opportunity to have a leadership impact and help them along their journey, and connect with them. So whether you look at it this way or not, that is an employee of yours. That is someone, even if it's a subcontracting relationship, that's someone that you go to battle with one way or another, or they help you with your brand, your product, whatever it is that you're in the market to deliver. There's a connection there. So I don't certainly having your house in order in terms of principles and your leadership approach when you're leading big teams is incredibly important. It's like the only thing that matters, more than subject matter expertise in my mind. It is a very different approach to a solopreneur or an entrepreneur with a very, very small team, but the principles and how we handle ourselves and those with whom we interact every day, subcontractors, clients, so forth, having those principles as your guiding true north is never a bad thing. So I think they're applicable regardless of size.
If you were to pick one of the 10 that you think is more applicable than others for entrepreneurship and smaller entrepreneurs, what would you say?
Without question, it's we number 9, we embrace challenge. And let's face it, man, everything in life, whether it's the business world, our personal lives, relationships, friendships, nearly everything in life is accomplished after overcoming one or more challenges. You want to lose some weight? You got to start burning calories, maybe do some resistance training. You want to learn the guitar? You better download an app. You got to get on YouTube. You got to go see a professional, whatever it is. You must put in the work to get better. When we talk about embracing challenge, it's no different whether there are external forces. So there's a competitive threat. Maybe you've got some downstream costs that are rising, that are causing your margin to shrink. Any scenario, you've got a difficult client. So you have a choice, right? Just like everything else in life, when these things present themselves, you have a choice to either run from them or be galvanized by them. And that's where we number 9 becomes so important. I should also mention the preceding we number 8 is we challenge each other. So whether it's an external force or a client or not, we're still going to challenge each other to be our best and be innovative and achieve excellence behind the scenes. But if you're a solopreneur or a small team leader, or you've got a team of 1 or 2 and you're an entrepreneur, we embrace challenge is where the money's at.
So as far as getting started on the entrepreneurship journey of culture of excellence, what is the begin? Maybe it's your story, maybe it's someone that you've worked with, coached, or close to. Where does the entrepreneurship journey start? If someone says, I want to go down this road, how does it get started in the first place?
Well, I think you got to have a product. You got to have a product or a service that is desired in the market, whatever that market is. And so identifying what it is, what that niche is for you. And once you've identified the niche, what is the product of that niche? And then probably most importantly, especially depending on the product, if you're in a commodity type based business or a business with a low barrier to entry, and this is where culture becomes so important, you got to have a differentiating factor. And that's usually found in the way of service, warranty, things like that. But it's what the competition across most industries is so strong today. You've got to have a differentiating factor. So for my very small team at Kyle McDowell Inc., service, it's about the product that we deliver, and that is the 10 W's, the leadership transformation and cultural transformation expertise that I've lived and personally helped others achieve. But also, anyone can do those things. The information's free. How you implement the information, the service that we deliver to our clients, the care that you just can't manufacture or buy somewhere, that is what differentiates us from others. And I think that's where all entrepreneurs, those that are wildly successful, they're galvanized against challenges, but they've got a product that is unique in the landscape that in which they operate, and they add value to their clients. And that's, obviously that should be all of our goals.
Well, if you have an informal team, like you mentioned, whether it's someone washing your car or subcontractors, once you decide to adopt a culture of excellence for yourself, how do you, I don't know what the right word would be, disseminate or spread it throughout that informal team when it's not a direct report that has to listen to you? How do you make a culture start to happen with the people around you?
Yeah, great question. And the answer for me is the same, whether they have to listen to you or they don't. It's got to be authentic. You've got to live it every single day. You've got to evangelize it. So for example, I wear, I don't know if you can pick it up, but I wear we bracelets. This one never comes off. It's my favorite. So being conspicuous that these are my principles, these are how I operate. You should know, for example, I'll leave the subcontractor. No, I'll leave the employee. I'll leave their name out of this scenario, but there's a guy on my team who is not good with the details. He turns in a product to me and I've got to look it over multiple times. Usually have to give the same points of feedback multiple times. And I have to remind him, and it's becoming more and more regular, and there's probably a greater ultimate outcome if things don't change. But I always remind him, we obsess over details. We number 10, we obsess over details. And I think it's important to be really conspicuous about what your principles are. That way, when they are compromised or they're violated or someone's not taking them seriously, you can remind them. And again, I'll go back to one of the examples I already mentioned, and that's we challenge each other. So if I'm Mark, you and I are doing business together and you're aware of my 10 principles that I live by every single day. I'm not perfect at it, but I do try to live by it every single day. If you and I are in a tough spot and I need to bring some bad information to you, or I've got to get you to step up your level of delivery, or you just need a pep talk, I'll probably start that conversation with, hey, Mark, we challenge each other, right? And it psychologically, it minimizes the defensiveness on the receiving end because, oh, wait, this is Kyle being Kyle. This is what he does. I know it's not personal. So when he comes at me with this, I should expect there's an opportunity for either for me to be better or an opportunity for us to be better collectively. So living them, being overt and conspicuous about using them over and over again and never compromising, even when it's tough. So number one is we do the right thing always. And clearly there are times where we can cut corners and we can compromise our quality, or we can, maybe look the other way when something is not as optimal as it could be. That's not who we are. So my teams recognize that. And those that work with me recognize that, and they know the bar is set very high. And when we don't achieve that bar, it's really easy to say, hey, come on, man. Come on. We do the right thing, right? And this level of work or this product that you've put in front of me today, it's not the right thing. It's not your best work because I've seen you do better. So just reminding folks and living them every single day is my best advice.
How do you maintain a culture once you get momentum and it gets rolling? Because I know a lot of times people can it can be like a blip. People get really excited at first, I'm all in, but then, the days turn into weeks, turn into months, turn into longer periods of time. How do you maintain it once you start it?
Yep. And, Mark, that's something I struggle with in my business today. And I've actually turned work down that I've sensed I personally, the work in which they've asked me to engage is a check the box process. They know they have a cultural challenge, or they know they need some type of leadership development, but they're not really invested in it. They've read the book, or they know of someone that's read the book, and they'll hire me to come speak or do some consulting work. But I'll check in 30 days later and there's no difference. And it's heartbreaking to me because I've seen the opposite happen. I've seen when people embrace these approaches, the difference they can make and the impact they can have. So the sustaining part is perhaps as difficult as the building part, because it requires not only for you to continue to demonstrate and live those same behaviors. For me, it's the 10 We's. You also have new people coming in and out of the engine that you've got to bring them up to speed. You got to prove to them that your approach, your we orientation, the value that you place on the relationship with them, the connections that you want to have, you have to prove that over and over and over again. And in addition to that, there's no shortage of scenarios that your meta will be tested and your connection and commitment to those principles will be challenged and tested. So, I like to say you got to lead by example. Not every day, but every interaction, and living your principles over a sustained long period of time is no different. I would say the toughest part of that long-term sustaining effort or sustainment effort is to continue to raise the bar. And that's where we challenge each other comes in, right? It's easy to sit on top of the mountaintop, get fat and happy while their competition sneaking up behind you. And that's not a culture of excellence. We're going to continue to challenge each other to be better, regardless of where we are in terms of our success. So it's not about just sustaining that environment inside the organization, inside the team. It's also about challenging each other to continuing to be our best and reach for new heights.
As the leader, how do you personally maintain it? I mean, I think that could be a lot of hard work as far as maintaining it yourself, because if you're not doing it yourself, you can't teach it to other people. How do you maintain it personally?
It's tough. It is not easy. I say all the time, the 10 We's and what I do is simple. It's very simple, but simple is not easy. I'll never forget when I first discovered these principles and kind of put them in writing, and they became, more and more who I was and the leader that I wanted to be. When I first introduced these principles, I would say half of my team was really energized about it. There was a quarter of the team that was probably excited, but maybe a little bit cautious. And then the last group was just downright, this guy's full of it. There's just, I don't believe him. I don't believe he will live these principles. And that group tended to be very, not confrontational because I was, air quotes, the boss, but they challenged. And there was a woman in particular who loved to challenge publicly. She would call me out in front of the rest of my team. She would call me out in front of her team. And don't you know, my initial reaction, I wanted my initial reaction to be the Kyle of old, where I would bang my fist on the desk and kind of raise my voice and assert my authority because I could. But in this instance, and from that moment forward, I also realized that here's the guy that's evangelizing, embracing challenge. And the first time someone tosses a challenge my way, I'm going to revert to the boss card. That doesn't work. I'm the whole thing's dead on arrival. I'm a hypocrite. There's no connection, and we're done. So that's a long way of saying that it's not enough to say it or say them. It's not enough to talk about what we're doing and how we're achieving this excellence. It's not enough to say we aspire to do these things. You are going to be tested every single day. And a big transformation for me occurred when I realized I was behaving this way inside the workplace, but I wasn't living these principles outside of the workplace. So another layer of hypocrisy kind of seeped in my existence, which compelled me to behave a little bit differently in my personal life and live the principles there as well.
What are some common challenges you see with people with what you said? They like it, they might bring you in, or maybe people you work with on a one-on-one basis. What are challenges with adoption after they say, "Oh, I read your book, I love it," and then they don't do anything? Why does that happen?
It's hard.
What's the pushback?
It's hard, Mark. It really is hard. And there are a number of reasons why it's hard, but usually the biggest is just momentum. In the most toxic environments, whether it's a team of 2 or a team of 2,000 or 20,000, momentum of bad energy, bad will, complacency, apathy, all of these emotions exist, and they exist exponentially more than the company or the organization or even team that is just average. So what do I mean by that? There are companies that the water cooler, or the virtual water cooler these days, proverbial water cooler, is nothing but bad energy and disdain for leaders of the organization, disdain for the path the company's taking, you name it. So if that is the norm and everyone wants to fit in, let's acknowledge that. First of all, we all want to belong, and we all want to feel as if we're part of something. So the person that comes to work with this rah energy to try to change the world or just change our team is either going to get laughed at, they're going to get ostracized, or they're going to get shunned. And so there's no upside. There's no upside to try to come and drive a big change, because you're running uphill, and it's hard to get followership. Which is why, if anyone can start that change, it's a person who happens to have influence or be in a position of authority. They fail often because they don't continue to live it. The first time they face challenge, they walk away from it and revert to old ways. So it's just so important to state them and live them every single day, even when the challenges become seemingly insurmountable. When you're trying to drive change, not from a leadership position, you're inside of a toxic organization. The beauty of that momentum I just mentioned is it also works the other way. And that is, if you can get a little bit of slippage, a little bit of progress for people to recognize we don't have to be miserable. We don't have to hate coming to work. We don't have to dislike everyone around us. I'm not naive, Mark. It doesn't mean we're all going to go out for beers every single day, but you don't have to hate your job. And that can create some momentum too. And that's where the we comes in, right? It's like, I got to be my best today because so-and-so's counting on me. Whether that's a client or a subcontractor or a vendor, or whether it's a member of your team, they're counting on me. And taking that every single day to work with you. And it's not that I got to go to work, or I got to work with these people, or I got to work on X, Y, and Z. It's I get to do these things today because there are people that are counting on me to do these things for their progress. And that's responsibility I take seriously. And that's something I call my leadership legacy.
Well, when you step in, what are some examples? I mean, how do you put the brakes on negative momentum?
Say stop. Seriously, say stop. So if you're in a meeting, whether it's a one-on-one or a group setting, and someone is just railing on, the soup of the day or whatever the scenario is, someone's railing on it. Okay, I hear you. What are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? Because complaining about it and not chasing solutions is only going to make this situation worse. I've been in environments where we're really overt about that, and we say, you got 5 minutes. Okay, this didn't go well. You got 5 minutes. Get it all on the table. Puke it out. Scream. Whatever it is you got to do. Whatever's the most cathartic activity you need. You got 5 minutes, man, because at minute 6, we're going into solution mode. And I've just found being relatable in those scenarios, right? So I'm compelled. I'm a sports guy, so I'm thinking of the NFL team, right? The NFL plays 17 games in the regular season. Picture yourself as a head coach of a team that is 1-15 going into the final week of the season. You're playing the defending Super Bowl champions. You're 21-point underdogs. A coach cannot go into that locker room on our side, the underdog side, and say, we're going to kick their ass today. We've got this. You can't do that. Your record proves that you're not going to go in there and kick their ass today. But what you can say is, we're going to work like hell to be our best today. We're going to put our best on the field. We're going to leave it all out there. And this is applicable in our business lives as well, man, as you know. I'm going to do everything I can to ensure success today. And if I come up short, that's all right. There's the next game, or there's next season, or there's something else after this. But that degree of relatability from the leader is incredibly important, because when the leader walks into the room and says, we're fine, there's no problem, when everyone around is just kind of looking around going, does this guy even work at the same company I do? There's no connection there. And I'm not going to trust, probably the most important word when it comes to the leader and those around them is trust. I'm not going to trust that person who doesn't even recognize the shit that's around us. So when you see that negativity, call it out, start chasing solutions, and don't pile onto it. Talk about the opportunity that we have in front of us. And again, not everyone's going to be rallied by that. They don't see the value in that. They're there. They keep their head down. They want to clock in and clock out. I got love for those people as well. But I think we have an opportunity and almost an obligation to try to find the best experience we can in this thing called work. Mark, I don't know if you realize this, but we spend on average in the US about 100,000 hours in our lifetime working. And the only thing you'll ever do more than that in this lifetime is sleep. So if you're looking for the right platform to make a difference, to help someone else, to have an impact, to create a legacy for yourself, like it or not, work is a pretty good place to start, because that's where we find ourselves more often than any place else.
Well, I like what you said about putting the brakes on the momentum. How about the other side of the coin? Once you get the negative momentum at least corralled, how do you step on the gas pedal for the good momentum?
Man, those are the fun ones. That's the fun part of the job. That's recognizing and rewarding those that are living these ways, living these principles, behaving in a way that they can be proud of, your organization can be proud of. And, you know, a lot of times entrepreneurs and corporate execs alike miss the connection between a high functioning culture and quantified results, because it's hard to say, you know, my employees have this engagement score of X or this net promoter score of Y, and how do I connect that to our revenue or our growth? It's really difficult. So people often overlook the impact of a high functioning culture, one that cares about one another, and one that has a sense of belonging, the impact that has in the company's bottom line. So when someone is caught living these principles or doing the right thing, or can be observed advancing our mission, whatever that mission is for the team that we're on, or the however little or however big it is, call them out. Call them out, recognize them. And it doesn't have to be the form of a giant cash bonus, although, you know, most people wouldn't turn that down. A lot of people, including myself, are easily motivated by things like, I appreciate you. And wow, man, I didn't know you had that in you. Fantastic work. And because of that work, we're going to be able to connect that work to the bigger picture, because that's where people like to be. I think, you know, when we are loose with our praise, and by that I mean we give it, but it's got to be authentic, and it's got to be for real progress and outcomes, not just busy work. And we recognize when someone is doing something, especially over and above and beyond what it is that they've been asked to do, creating that goodwill by recognizing the work, rewarding them, and the reward can become in many different fashions. That's up to you, whatever you can afford. And that could be just time away from work, for example. It doesn't have to be a big cash thing. Recognizing it is probably the much quicker 2-word answer to your question.
Well, because we spoke about them a little bit, what can an entrepreneur do if they find themselves, oh my gosh, I'm you know, whatever you want to call it, a downward spiral, negative space and time, they're getting the wrong kind of momentum. What can they do to break out of that as an entrepreneur?
Dude, I live it every day. So I think I can speak with some authority on this matter, because I've gone from leading big to just starting very, very, very small, team of one, just me, 5 years ago. I think you got to be just stubborn enough to say, I know I have something here. I know my business. It's not a question of if, it's more like when. And I just happen to know, and I believe this in really all aspects of life, repetition and consistency There's no formula that's going to replace those two words. The more committed we are to our cause, and the cause could be growing the business or having an impact, whatever it is for you, the more committed you are to that, the less open you are to hearing the naysayers, and actually having a sense of, I just don't give a shit what other people say. You're not going to slow me down. I'm not going to allow your negative opinions on what I can and can't do just because you can't do something to slow me down. So I think there's a degree of stubbornness that must be in there. There's a degree of optimism that has to be in there. And belief. You got to believe in what you're doing. And there are times and days and sometimes even weeks where I even question that myself. But I connect what I do to something bigger than just myself. And I know that there's something out there that I'm almost obligated to deliver and help others with. And that's what gets me through those dark times. So find that thing, Simon Sinek would say, find that why for yourself.
So unpack that a little bit as far as what do you mean? Because you use the word cause. An entrepreneur has to have a cause, reason to keep going. What does a cause look like?
Love that question.
A big goal, or what is it?
Dude, I love that question because sometimes purpose and cause gets a bad rap, and people think you must have some really high paying, important, visible job or be a superstar, or celebrity, or an athlete to have a purpose or a cause. If you manage a coffee shop or you're a barista, you can have a cause. You should have a cause. And it can be as simple as, I'm going to brighten someone's day today. Or if you're the manager of that coffee shop, I'm going to help someone on their path to do something bigger than be a barista. If they want to be a barista forever, that's fantastic. I'll help them become the best barista ever. But we're wired to want to help each other. It's in our biology. It's in our DNA. We are tribal by nature. And we're also wired to accept that help. So I just believe whether I want to create a company that is committed to helping leaders transform their organizations, helping companies get out of their own way, helping people find and reconnect with the passion and optimism that they once had when they entered the workforce. That's my purpose. That's my cause. You have to find that for yourself, regardless of industry, regardless of the size of the company, regardless of the role you play in that company. Finding your cause, your why, is incredibly important. It's what fuels us every single day. And it doesn't have to be some macro change the world thing. It can be, I'm going to help someone have a better day than they had earlier before they saw me, or better than they had yesterday. And you've done something if you've done that.
So is it finding people as far as within a corporation or within an entrepreneurial endeavor? Are you saying finding people that share your why, or sharing your why so they can adopt it? What does that look like once you find your why, you find your cause?
Wow, that's a great question. I don't know that I would go as far to say they've got to share the why. I think it's important they've identified their own why. For example, and that goes back to the culture of excellence, having us align around our personal goals. So I'll make up a scenario, and this may fall flat, but hopefully it paints the picture. So let's say I'm hiring for a graphic designer, and I'm really open and outspoken about my principles during the interview process. Let's say, Mark, you're the candidate, and you've got a hell of a background in graphics design. You're very talented. During the interview process, I've told you how I operate. I've been very transparent and open about the principles that drive me and fuel our company. I think it's okay for you to disagree. I think it's okay for you to say, no, those principles aren't for me. Now, I'm not going to go against them. I'm not going to be a contrarian or cause trouble, but here are the principles to which I subscribe. And that's the connection. If there are principles or your why, you've established your why, whatever that is, and you can articulate that to me, and that why for me, from you, should paint a picture of you wanting to have an impact on something bigger than yourself. And it can be in the graphic design world. Maybe that's your side hustle while you launch another business, whatever it is. But we align on what that is, and I'm well aware of what that is for you. But most importantly, to answer the question, if you have your why and you're steadfast and committed to finding fulfillment from and with that why, I'm good. You don't have to be a puppet of my principles. You don't have to follow every word and letter that I follow, but you do have to be committed to something. You can't be drifting.
That is awesome. And we have covered a lot of ground in a short period of time. When it comes to creating a culture of excellence, well, within a company or for an entrepreneur, if people are listening, watching, and they're like, okay, I get it, I want to do that. to get going or to help with early adoption, if you were to say, do this at least, whether it's reiterating something you said or maybe something you haven't touched on yet, if you were to say, at least do this one thing, at least do this one thing, what would you tell people to do?
Establish your principles. What are the rules? So let me back up. So the definition of principle, it's a fundamental truth or a system of beliefs for a chain of reasoning. That's the Oxford Dictionary definition of principle. So what are your fundamental truths? What do you want to stand for? What do you want to be known as? What do you want your team or your brand or your company to be known as? I'm not talking lofty, happy mission statement stuff. Those are great at communicating like our intentions to the external public. But behind the curtain, what do you want to be known for? What do you want the brand to be known for? Establish your principles. Figure out what it is that makes you tick, your non-negotiables, your system of beliefs, your chain of reasoning. Live them every single day. Share them with those around you, because when you share it, you're more likely to be accountable to them, because you don't want to be perceived as a hypocrite to those that you love and care, you care about their opinions. So for me, and by the way, to establish those principles, there probably is a step prior to that. And that's just having a quick analysis and inventory of the things that I'm good at, the things that I'm not good at, and what do I want to do to bridge that gap. I think, having that self-reflection, in my book, I talk about something called the mirror of truth, which is really a metaphor. But the point is let's take time for real self-reflection. Where do I have to get better? What are the things I'm really good at? And how do I address those things that I want to be better at? Whether it's a course, whether it's a mentor, whether it's reading, whatever it is. But identifying those things are incredibly important. But I think they are the prerequisite to establishing your principles.
This is excellent. And if people want to find you online, where are the best place or places to go?
Well, first of all, here. So chatting with you, which has been a real pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your platform and share some time with you. My book is called Begin with We, 10 Principles for Building and Sustaining a Culture of Excellence. And my website and all of my social media handles are all the same. And that's at Kyle McDowell Inc. or KyleMcDowellInc.com.
Thank you for the time, Kyle. I really appreciate this.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you, Mark.
And scene. Thank you for tuning into the Idea Climbing radio show today. I really appreciate it. I hope you got something great out of it that you can take into your own life and use to be better in your own life. If you want more great shows like this, go to 216thenet.com. You want to see more of my interviews, radio show, and podcast? Go to markjcartertv.com. Again, that's markjcartertv.com and 216thenet.com. Hope to see you on one of those platforms, or maybe even both.